In the heart of Makonde Village in southern Tanzania, life seemed almost perfect for Amina. She woke each morning to the sound of roosters crowing and children laughing in the distance. Her small mud brick home stood surrounded by mango trees, and inside it was filled with warmth and laughter. Amina's husband, Jabari, was known in the community as a hardworking man, respected for his honesty and strength. To everyone around them, they looked like the picture of love and stability. Amina often felt blessed, believing she had everything she ever dreamed of: a loyal husband, a peaceful home, and the respect of her neighbors. Her younger sister, Zuri, was a regular presence in their lives. She visited often, sometimes staying for days at a time. Amina welcomed her with open arms, happy to have her close. Zuri was lively and full of energy, and she easily blended into the rhythm of the household. Jabari treated her like his own sister, and the three of them would share meals, laughter, and stories late into the evening. For Amina, those moments felt like proof that her family bond was unbreakable. The villagers admired the closeness between the sisters. People often whispered about how lucky Amina was, not just for her husband, but also for the joy of having her family so involved in her. To Amina, the future looked steady, almost certain. Yet, beneath this calm and happy picture, something hidden was quietly stirring, something she could not yet see. The cracks were small, invisible, waiting for their moment to surface. At first, Amina thought nothing of it. Jabari had always been a hardworking man, so when he started coming home later than usual, she told herself it was just because of the farm or community matters. But slowly, the late evenings became more frequent. Sometimes he would walk in after everyone had already eaten, smelling faintly of soap, as if he had freshened up somewhere else before coming home. When she asked, he would smile, pat her shoulder, and give simple answers like, "I was delayed," or "there was work to finish." His words sounded normal, but something in his tone felt different, almost distant. It wasn't just the late nights. Amina began to notice how often Jabari stepped outside to take phone calls. Their home was small, so usually there was no need for privacy. But now he would slip out quietly, lowering his voice, speaking quickly, almost in a whisper. When Amina walked closer, he would end the call abruptly, putting his phone in his pocket with a forced smile. She wanted to believe it was nothing, maybe work, maybe friends, but her heart began to feel uneasy. Around the same time, Zuri's visits became more frequent. She seemed to appear at the house whenever Amina was busiest, when she was in the kitchen stirring a pot of stew, when she was doing laundry by the river, or when she went to the market. Amina didn't think much of it at first. Zuri had always been welcome, like another daughter in the home. But soon, the timing began to feel strange. Why was her sister always there when she herself was away or distracted? Amina started to notice little moments that unsettled her. Sometimes, when she entered the room unexpectedly, she would catch Jabari and Zuri sitting a little too close, laughing at something together. They would straighten up quickly, almost as if they hadn't expected her to walk in. Other times, she would find Zuri lingering even after Amina was clearly tired and ready for bed. Jabari never asked her to leave. Instead, he encouraged her to stay longer. The unease grew inside Amina like a heavy stone. She tried to brush it away, telling herself she was imagining things. After all, this was her husband and her sister, the two people she trusted the most in the world. To doubt them felt like betraying herself. So she forced a smile, served meals, and kept her words soft. But at night, when the house was quiet and Jabari slept beside her, her mind refused to rest. She remembered every strange glance, every sudden silence, every secretive phone call. Her heart whispered warnings, but her love for her family forced her to bury them deep. Amina told herself that doubt was dangerous, that it could break even the strongest bond if she let it grow. And so she chose silence, clinging to hope, even as the unease continued to gnaw at her soul. The morning started like any other. Sunlight streamed through the cracks in the wooden window, and Amina hummed softly as she went about her chores. Jabari had already left for the fields, and the house was quiet except for the sound of her sweeping. When she reached the bedroom, she began making the bed, smoothing the sheets and fluffing the pillows the way she always did. But as she lifted Jabari's pillow, something small and shiny caught her eye. Her hand froze. There, tucked halfway beneath the pillow, lay a gold ring. At first, she thought maybe it was Jabari's, but when she picked it up, her breath caught in her throat. She knew this ring. The delicate design, the tiny engraving along the side, it was Zuri's. Their late mother had given it to her before she passed away, telling her to treasure it as a reminder of family love. Amina had seen it on her sister's finger countless times. There was no mistake. Her heart pounded in her chest, so loud it felt as though the whole village could hear it. She sat down on the bed, clutching the ring tightly in her palm, her mind racing. What was Zuri's ring doing under her husband's pillow? It couldn't be an accident. It couldn't be a simple mistake. The weight of the truth pressed on her chest, stealing her breath away. Memories rushed back to her, Jabari's late nights, the secretive phone calls, the way Zuri always seemed to be around when Amina was busy. Every small unease she had brushed aside now came crashing back, sharper and clearer than ever. The stolen glances she thought she imagined, the laughter that stopped when she entered the room, it all suddenly made sense. Tears blurred her vision, spilling down her cheeks before she could stop them. The betrayal was almost too much to bear. Not from strangers, not from people outside her home, but from the two she trusted most in the world. Her husband, the man she built her life with, and her sister, her own blood, the one she had protected and loved since childhood. Amina pressed the ring tightly into her palm, the sharp edges digging into her skin, grounding her in the pain of reality. She felt as though the walls of the room were closing in on her, trapping her in a storm of heartbreak and disbelief. She wanted to scream, to run, to demand answers, but her voice refused to come. Instead, she slipped the ring into the fold of her dress, hiding it close to her heart. She couldn't confront them yet, not when her world had just shattered in silence. For now, she would carry this secret alone, carrying the weight of a truth that burned inside her. That morning, as she finished making the bed with trembling hands, Amina's home no longer felt like a sanctuary. It felt like a cage built on lies, and she realized life would never be the same again. From the moment Amina slipped Zuri's ring into the fold of her dress, her world changed. Every glance, every word, every movement in her home carried a new weight. She no longer looked at Jabari and Zuri with the same innocent eye. Instead, she watched quietly, carefully, hiding her storm behind a calm face. She moved through her days as though nothing had happened, cooking meals, tending the house, greeting neighbors with her usual smile. But inside, her heart was raw and heavy. She became a silent observer, studying the smallest detail, and what she saw tore her apart. When Zuri visited, Amina noticed how Jabari's face lit up just slightly more than it did for anyone else. It wasn't obvious, not to an outsider, but to Amina, it was like a knife. His smile lingered longer, his laughter came easier. Sometimes, when he thought she wasn't looking, his eyes would follow Zuri with a warmth he once reserved only for his wife. There were moments too small for others to notice, a hand brushing too close, a smile shared when silence fell, an inside joke whispered quickly before Amina entered the room. She caught them stealing glances across the courtyard, glances that carried meaning, glances they thought were hidden. Every time, Amina's stomach twisted, her chest tightened, but she forced her face to remain calm. She could not let them know what she knew. Not yet. At night, when Jabari lay beside her, breathing heavily in sleep, Amina would turn her back to him, staring into the dark. She wanted to scream, to wake him and demand the truth. But the words never came. She felt trapped, bound by fear and heartbreak. If she spoke too soon, if she accused without proof beyond the ring, would they twist it against her? Would her pain be dismissed as jealousy? So she kept her silence. The ring stayed hidden, pressed deep into a cloth at the bottom of her trunk, like a secret burning to be revealed. Each time she opened the trunk to fetch clothes, her eyes fell on it, and fresh pain surged through her body. Her sister's laughter, once a comfort, now sounded sharp, almost cruel. Her husband's voice, once her anchor, now felt like a stranger's. Amina carried herself with quiet dignity, but inside she was breaking piece by piece. She felt like a guest in her own home, watching her life unfold like a play where she no longer belonged. Still, she chose silence. She wanted to see how far they would go, how long they would carry their secret, believing she was blind. The truth was undeniable, but she held her pain close, waiting for the right moment. And in that silence, her strength began to grow, even as her heart bled. The day of the family gathering arrived with music, laughter, and the smell of roasted meat filling the air. Relatives from nearby villages came together, dressed in their best clothes, their voices rising in warm greeting. Amina moved among them with practiced grace, offering smiles and serving food, but inside her heart felt heavy. She carried a secret no one else knew, and it made every moment feel like she was living in a shadow. When Zuri arrived, she walked in with her usual brightness, hugging everyone and joking as though the world was perfect. But Amina's eyes went straight to her hand. There it was, a ring. Not the one their mother had given her, not the one Amina had found hidden under Jabari's pillow, but another gold ring, shining in the afternoon light. Zuri wore it proudly, twisting it on her finger while she laughed, as if she had nothing to hide. The sight cut Amina deeply. How could her sister act so normal, so free, when Amina's nights were filled with tears and silence? Jabari sat across the courtyard, pretending to be busy with conversation. But Amina noticed how he avoided her eyes. Whenever she looked in his direction, he turned away, his smile faltering. He laughed at jokes, spoke with relatives, but the weight of guilt sat on his shoulders. The more he avoided her gaze, the clearer his betrayal became. It was as though silence itself shouted the truth. As the afternoon went on, Amina found herself watching the two of them closely. She saw the way Zuri's laughter grew softer when Jabari was near, how her eyes flickered toward him even in a crowd. She saw Jabari shift uncomfortably whenever their hands brushed, his voice growing quieter when Zuri leaned close. They thought no one noticed, but Amina saw everything. Her chest burned with anger and heartbreak, but she kept her face calm. To everyone else, she was the perfect wife, the devoted sister, the kind daughter. No one could see the storm raging inside her. She knew she could not carry this secret forever. The weight of it was too much, and the more she stayed silent, the more it ate away at her spirit. That evening, when the family gathered around to share stories, Amina sat quietly, her hands folded in her lap. She looked at her mother's face, peaceful and proud as she watched her daughters side by side. Amina's throat tightened. Their late mother's gift, meant to symbolize love and family, had instead become a symbol of betrayal and shame. In that moment, Amina made a decision. She would not remain silent forever. She would not allow her life to be built on lies. But she also knew the truth had to be revealed carefully, at the right time, in front of those who mattered most. She owed it to herself, to her family, and to the memory of the mother who trusted them to love each other. So Amina stayed quiet that night, her heart steady with resolve. The moment to expose them was coming, and when it did, the truth would break everything open. The day of truth came when both families gathered at Aminia's house. The courtyard was filled with voices, children running around, and the smell of food cooking over the fire. Everyone was laughing, talking, and sharing stories, but Amina's heart was beating fast in her chest. She had carried the secret for too long, and the weight was crushing her. She knew this was the moment. There would be no turning back after today. She waited until everyone was seated, the men talking in one corner, and the women gathered around with bowls of food. Zuri sat opposite her, smiling as though nothing in the world was wrong, her new ring glinting on her finger. Jabari sat nearby, trying to act normal but unable to meet Amina's eye. The sight of them both filled her with pain, but also with strength. This was the time. Amina stood slowly, her hands trembling but her voice calm. She reached into the fold of her dress, where she had hidden the ring all these weeks. Pulling it out, she held it high for everyone to see. The gold caught the light, and instantly Zuri's face paled. A hush fell over the courtyard. Conversation stopped. All eyes turned to Amina. She looked directly at her sister, her voice steady though her heart was breaking. "Zuri," she said softly, "why was your ring under my husband's pillow?" The air went silent. Not a sound, not even from the children. All that could be heard was the crackle of the fire. Zuri's mouth opened, then closed. Her hands shook, her eyes filled with tears. For a moment, she tried to look away, but the weight of everyone's stares pinned her down. Finally, her voice broke. I can't lie anymore," she whispered, her body trembling. "It's true. Jabari and we have been together. For months." Gasps filled the air. Plates slipped from hands, crashing to the ground. Aminia's face turned pale, her hands clutching her chest. The elders shook their heads in disbelief, their eyes wide with shame and anger. The courtyard that had been full of laughter was now heavy with betrayal. Amina stood frozen, the ring still in her hand, tears streaming down her face but her body strong. Her worst fear had been spoken aloud, and the truth was now exposed for all to see. Jabari lowered his head, unable to defend himself, his silence confirming everything. The family was shattered. Voices rose, anger, cries, and heartbreak mixed together. Some tried to comfort Amina, others shouted at Zuri, while a few simply sat in stunned silence. The bond that once held the family together now felt torn beyond repair. In that moment, Amina realized her life would never return to what it was. The betrayal was no longer a secret she carried alone. It was open, raw, and heavy in the hearts of everyone who heard it. The truth had finally come out, and nothing could ever erase it. The moment Zuri confessed, the courtyard seemed to collapse into chaos. But no sound cut deeper than the cry that escaped Aminia's lips. She clutched her chest, her face twisting in pain, and then sank onto the ground, her body trembling as she broke into uncontrollable sobs. Her daughters, the ones she had raised with love, the ones she always believed would stand together through life, were now enemies, torn apart by betrayal. Amina rushed to her mother's side, kneeling beside her, trying to steady her shaking hand. "Mama, please," she whispered through her own tears. But Amina could not be calmed. She wept loudly, her voice breaking with each word. "My children, my daughters, how could this happen under my roof? How could blood betray blood?" Her cries pierced the air, leaving everyone silent. The shame of it all weighed heavily on her. In their community, family honor was everything. To know that her son-in-law and her own daughter had sinned in such a way was unbearable. Neighbors and relatives who had once admired her family now looked on with pity and judgment. The whispers had already begun, and Amina knew they would spread like wildfire beyond the courtyard. The thought of it broke her heart even more. Jabari sat in silence, his head bowed, while Zuri knelt a few feet away, crying and begging for forgiveness. But Mama Nia could not even look at her. She turned her face away, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You, my child, how could you do this to your sister? How could you dishonor your own mother?" Her voice cracked, and she buried her face in her hands. The elders, sensing how deep the wound was, stepped forward to restore some order. They spoke in calm but firm voices, reminding everyone that anger would not heal the wound. They asked Amina to sit, asked Zuri to remain quiet, and tried to guide the family toward some form of understanding. But even they struggled with the weight of the betrayal. One elder shook his head slowly and said, "This is not just a mistake. This is fire that has burned the roots of the family tree." Amina sat quietly, her arms still around her mother, her face wet with tears but her body strong. She felt her mother's pain as if it were her own. Zuri, meanwhile, remained on her knees, sobbing, her once bright spirit crushed under the weight of guilt. The entire family sat in heavy silence, broken only by Mama Nia's occasional cries. That night, as the gathering ended, the courtyard no longer felt like a place of love and unity. It felt like the center of a storm. Mama Nia was left shaken, her dignity wounded, her heart torn between two daughters she no longer recognized. The betrayal had not just broken Amina's marriage, it had fractured the entire family, leaving scars that no words could easily heal. The days after the revelation were heavy, filled with whispers, tears, and silence that lingered in every corner of the home. Amina felt the sting of betrayal in every breath, but she refused to let it destroy her spirit. She had cried her tears in the quiet of the night, pressing her face into her pillow so no one could hear. She had asked herself 1,000 times, why me? Why my own sister? Why the man I trusted most? But with each passing day, her heart grew calmer, and something unexpected began to rise inside her strength. One morning, as the sun rose over Makonde Village, Amina stood outside her house and looked at the fields stretching before. For years she had built her life around Jabari, supporting him, caring for him, believing their love was unshakable. But now, she saw the truth clearly. Love without loyalty was nothing but an empty shell. She would not spend the rest of her life trapped in a marriage that had already died. Amina made her decision quietly but firmly. She would leave Jabari. She would not beg. She would not fight to hold on to what was already broken. Instead, she would carry herself with dignity and walk away. This choice did not come from anger alone, but from self-respect. She knew her worth, and she knew she deserved more than lies and betrayal. When she told Jabari her decision, her voice was steady. He sat in silence, shame heavy on his face, but she did not look for excuses or apology. She simply said, "I will not stay in a home where my trust has been destroyed. I will not live with a man who chose betrayal over love." Her words cut deep, but they came from a place of truth. The community watched closely, some expecting her to collapse under the weight of shame. But instead, Amina held her head high. She visited her mother daily, helping her heal from the heartbreak. She spent time in prayer, in quiet reflection, finding peace in her own strength. Slowly, she began to think of her future not as a broken woman, but as a woman starting anew. She began to dream of the small tailoring business she had once spoken about but never pursued. She imagined renting a small space in Dar es Salaam, working with her hands, stitching together clothes not just for money, but as a way of stitching back her own life. The thought gave her hope, a reason to rise each morning with courage. Amina's strength became visible to everyone around her. Neighbors whispered, not in pity, but in respect. They saw a woman who had been betrayed yet refused to be crushed. Instead of clinging to what was gone, she chose to walk forward with dignity. Her story became more than one of pain. It became a lesson in resilience. Amina was no longer just the wife of Jabari or the sister of Zuri. She was her own woman now, standing tall, building a new life from the ashes of her broken past. When Amina finally walked away, many in the village expected Jabari to marry Zuri. People whispered that surely this was his plan all along, that he would take her as his wife now that the truth was out. But to everyone's surprise, and especially to Zuri's, Jabari did nothing. He avoided her, barely spoke to her, and when pressed by the elders, he refused to make any promise of marriage. His betrayal had destroyed Amina, but he had no intention of giving Zuri the honor she thought was waiting for her. At first, Zuri tried to stay strong. She told herself that Jabari only needed time, that he would come around once the dust settled. But as days turned into weeks, the silence between them grew heavier. Jabari avoided her completely, ashamed to even look at her. He had lost his wife, his respect in the community, and the trust of his family, and he had no courage left to face the mess he had created. Zuri was left standing alone, her heart breaking in ways she never imagined. The shame followed her everywhere. Women in the market no longer welcomed her with friendly smiles. Children whispered behind her back. Friends she once trusted now avoided her, afraid of being judged by association. What she thought was love had turned into a scar that marked her wherever she went. The ring she once wore so proudly now felt like a curse, and she often hid her hands, ashamed of what they represented. At home, things were no better. Mama Nia, though still her mother, could not look at her without tears. The pain of betrayal ran too deep. Conversations were short, the warmth gone. Even her own family treated her like an outsider, unable to forget the wound she had caused. Nights became her enemy, long and sleepless, filled with regrets that clawed at her heart. Zuri replayed everything in her mind, the secret glances, the stolen moments, the belief that Jabari truly loved her. She realized too late that what she thought was love was nothing more than weakness and selfishness. Jabari had never promised her a future. She had only fooled herself into believing it. And now, with Amina gone and Jabari refusing her, she had lost everything. Loneliness became her constant companion. She stopped visiting the places she once loved, afraid of the stares and whispers. She stopped laughing, stopped smiling, carrying herself like a shadow of who she used to be. What had once felt exciting and daring now felt empty and bitter. The truth burned inside her. She had destroyed her sister's marriage, broken her mother's heart, and lost the respect of her community. And for what? A man who would not even stand by her when it mattered most. Zuri's fall was quiet but painful. No one had to punish her. The weight of her own choices was punishment enough, leaving her with nothing but regret and the echo of a love that was never real. In Dar es Salaam, Amina began her new chapter with nothing but her courage and a sewing machine. At first, the days were hard. She worked in a small corner of a busy street, stitching simple dresses and repairing old clothes for little pay. But Amina poured her heart into every piece of fabric, treating each stitch like a step toward her freedom. Slowly, customers began to notice her skill. Word spread about the woman who not only sewed well, but also carried herself with quiet dignity. Her business grew, and with it her confidence. Soon she was designing her own styles, selling clothes at the market, and even training young girls who wanted to learn the craft. People admired her resilience, how she had risen from betrayal and heartbreak to build something with her own hands. She no longer lived in the shadow of what had been done to her. Instead, she created a life that was fully her own. Back in the village, Jabari and Zuri lived with the weight of their choices. Their names carried shame, and neither found peace in what they had once called love. Regret became their companion, while Amina's story turned into an example of strength. In the end, Amina proved something powerful. Betrayal can break hearts, but it cannot destroy a strong spirit. She showed that even after the deepest wounds, it is possible to rise, to build, and to shine again. Her life became a reminder to everyone around her that while betrayal may destroy family, truth and strength can rebuild lives stronger than before.